This week on Brian Ross Investigates, mystery of the lake. Who dumped two bodies in Lake Mead outside Las Vegas?
Right now, investigators trying to figure out whose remained paddleboaters found at Lake Mead.
Was it the work of the mafia?
This is a murder case. It obviously wasn't suicide.
We'll hear from legendary mob lawyer and former Las Vegas mayor Oscar Goodman.
I'm sure they never expected when the body was placed in the lake that it would be discovered.
Plus, basketball star Lorenzen Wright was murdered by a hitman hired by his ex-wife. Now Sherra Wright, sentenced to 30 years in prison, wants to get out early.
Did you plot and conspire to kill your former husband?
No, indirectly, yes, sir.
But Lorenzen Wright's mother says, no way.
She need to do time. I'm doing life without my child. So I want her to feel like I feel.
We've got the latest on the parole board decision. And this week's winners and losers in the media. See if you agree with the editors of Mediaite. From the studios of the Law&Crime Trial Network in New York City's Herald Square, this is Brian Ross Investigates. Good evening. Thanks for joining us and welcome to our friends on Facebook Live. I'm Brian Ross, joined as always by my colleague Rhonda Schwartz. And Rhonda, we begin tonight with the latest in the case of the murder of the all-star basketball player Lorenzen Wright, who was killed by a hitman hired by his ex-wife, Sherra Wright. She was convicted for her role and sentenced to 30 years in prison. And this week she became eligible for parole for the first time, Rhonda.
That's right, Brian. Lorenzen Wright's mother was not happy with the plea deal Sherra Wright made that allowed her to avoid a life sentence. And she left no doubt about her feelings at this week's parole board hearing in Tennessee.
The murder of Lorenzen Wright was actually caught on tape in a 911 call he made that night.
Starting on 911, where's your emergency? Hello? Hello?
11 shots can be heard. He never speaks. Wright's ex-wife Sherra pleaded guilty to arranging the murder and received a 30-year prison sentence, which under Tennessee law meant she was eligible for parole this year.
Did you plot and conspire to kill your former husband?
No, indirectly, yes, sir. But
I don't have indirectly by the facts of the offense from what I have, and that's what I'm trying to figure out. And I'm not relitigating this case. You're already convicted.
But Sherra Wright made new and unverified claims about her former husband, Lorenzen.
Mr. Wright, my ex-husband, Lorenzen, he got involved in the drug ring. And there were some people that we owed money to, he owed money to great amounts of money. And during that process, I decided that I couldn't handle that because it actually led to a lot of pressure and a lot of beatings and a lot of things. I mean, there was some suicidal attempts on his end, and it was just too much, and I didn't...
Prosecutors say she wanted her husband killed so she could collect on his $1 million life insurance policy.
I took the plea deal because it was just in my best interest because I knew what was being said, and I was very depressed about that, and I felt like I was responsible for Lorenzen's death in a lot of ways.
Sherra and Lorenzen's son, Lorenzen Wright Jr., appeared at the hearing to support his mother.
Even with my mom playing a role in my father's death, I still had to understand who she is in my life. She is a victim of domestic violence, abuse, whether it is mental, physical, or emotional. It does not excuse her from the decisions that she's made, and it doesn't take back the time that we've lost from my father. But I do understand as I become older how much mental trauma, physical abuse, and emotional abuse can do to a person.
But Lorenzen's mother and his great-uncle were there to strongly oppose Sherra Wright's potential release, saying that she needed to serve the entire 30-year sentence.
I know the kids are sincere in what they say, but I also believe that even they think their mother did something wrong. And there's no doubt about the record. Yes, she did something wrong. I personally don't think she served enough time for her act. The act that took my nephew out of this world was unbelievable. That was just total evil. There's no way to describe it other than evil. And if you, the parole board, let her out now, no way. She has not had enough time to sit down, contemplate, and realize what she did.
I know they love their mother, and they want her to come home just because she's their mother. But if she was the neighbor next door that planned to kill their dad, it wouldn't have went like this. No, and that's why I think she need to do 30. She don't need to do it 30. You can let her come home at 30. I just need for her to do what she did and pay for it. She need to do time. I'm doing life without my child. So I want her to feel like I feel. Left out, lost and left out.
My vote today is to deny your parole due to the seriousness of the offense, because I believe release from custody this time would appreciate the seriousness of the crime and hear you again on in May of 2027.
2027 before she'll be back there. We're joined now by Terri Austin, our colleague here at Law&Crime. And Terri, you helped to cover this case. She got 30 years, but the man who actually pulled the trigger at her behest got life.
Well, that's right. And I think 30 years is probably the amount of time she should be serving. She is up for parole now. And it's interesting because normally in Tennessee, it would be after a third of the sentence, which would be about 9 years. She's getting 3 years credit. But there's a special law in Tennessee where you have this safety valve date when the prisons are crowded and you can get an early parole hearing. And that's what's happening here. And we saw that one parole board did not want her to get out. And so we'll see what happens with the other. There's 7 total members on that board.
Right, they yet to vote. Terri, a question for you from Rhonda Swartz. Rhonda?
Sherra and Lorenzen Wright's son, Lorenzen Jr., spoke passionately on behalf of his mother's release. This seems to be a real family tragedy, Terri.
Rhonda, it's a horrible tragedy, especially since there were 7 children between the two. One of them died at infancy, but all of these children love their mom. They don't want to think that she's involved in this. They believe her when she said she was just doing the right thing for the family. So I think it's a tragic sense of any case, because here they're going to not have their mother or their father, and they were a very close-knit family. So we'll see what happens at the end of the day. But yes, that whole family is very much in support of their mother because they want her home. Just like Lorenzen's mom said, they want her home.
As Lorenzen's mom said, she's doing life without her son. And it was her determination, her perseverance that actually led the police to reopen the case after it had gone quite cold. A tribute to that mother.
Well, that's exactly right. And it's a good thing they kept doing it because the case went cold for so many years. But this was a brutal, brutal murder. And so I believe that she definitely had the motive and the incentive to make sure that they found out who killed her son.
Well, it was a tragedy all around. Terri Austin, thank you so much for being here tonight.
Thank you.
All right. Up next, the mystery of the lake. Who dumped the bullet-ridden bodies found in Lake Mead outside Las Vegas? Was it the mafia? Longtime mob lawyer Oscar Goodman will be here to give us his insights. You're watching Brian Ross Investigates on the Law&Crime Trial Network.